Hey folks, I'm Greg. Welcome to the next page of Field Notes. Today, as you can see, I'm standing in front of a couple of my favorite fly fishing tools. My little skiff, which I built and we'll talk about in another video, and Emmy Lou, my 2007 Casita. And I said fly fishing tools, and I pointed at my RV. Why? Well, because I realized that for fly fishing, this Casita has gotten me a lot more access, a lot more time on the water than any of my boat or fleet of boats have been able to do. And that's what this video is about. Should you, if you have limited resources, which we all do, spend your money on an RV or a boat or fleet of boats? Let's talk about the fleet of boats first. If you're a multi-species fly fisherman like I am, talked about it last week, for good or for bad, I fish for redfish, I fish for trout up in the mountains, and then locally we've got white bass and lakes and rivers. So apologize for the Chinook helicopter flying over my head. Anyway, so we've got all these different fisheries around where I live, but I do like to travel distances to get to the really exciting stuff to me. I love bass fishing, I love fishing around here in the rivers too, but really I love the redfish and the trout on the coast and chasing trout in the mountains. That's really what I love to do. So if I wanted to do all those things, I would need 3 or 4 boats, right? My little skiff, maybe to get me around some rivers and lakes here around central Texas. Something on the coast, which has different specialty items needed. And then a raft or drift boat for the mountains. So once you get into that, you know, one RV versus 3 or 4 boats, and I'm not even mentioning kayaks and stand-up paddleboards. So you can have a lot of money in your little fleet of boats, and you still are going to be a little behind the curve because you're not in that boat every single day. If you're doing all that different type of fishing like I talked about last week, you know, we have a little center console old one down in Rockport, and I just am not in it enough to really keep it dialed in all the time. There's new technology, there's things I would want to upgrade it with, but I've spent some money on this one recently, and I just think that I've gotten a lot more use and a lot more enjoyment in the fly fishing and non-fly fishing, but especially in the fly fishing part of my life from the RV. Why? Well, for one thing, I already mentioned one boat can't do everything, but guides always have the boat that you need wherever you are. The RV can get you to the river, to the coast, to the lake, wherever you're going, and you can stay for cheap, and you can get there cheaply. You can spend the night in. Usually, when I go up to Colorado and New Mexico, I spend the night somewhere halfway for free. In all these little towns, they have little free plug-in sites even, and head on up the next day. So, you know, besides gas, I can get up pretty cheaply to the mountains and 4 hours to the coast. Well, once you're there, the other advantage is you're saving money on hotels. And what can you do with that money? Well, you can get a guide, for one, who's going to have the right boat, who's going to have the knowledge, and he's going to build a relationship with you that you can maintain and really help you know when the best times to come back are. And you can always come back because you just hook up the trailer and go. One of my favorite things about the RV, you know, gets me out to places where I can either bank fish or I can rent a boat, which is another great option in the mountains in Colorado and Montana. I know a number of places you can rent boats and rafts. And you're saving on all of that hassle of boat ownership. It's very expensive to own boats. RVs are expensive too, and they break. But you just have one RV, you have several different types of boats, they're always going to be in disrepair. It's hard to keep a fleet of boats up, to par. So you've got a cheap place to stay. Wherever you go, you can get your guide and have a great time. The older I get, really, I want to focus on being on the water and maximizing that trip. And guides are a great way to do that, obviously, and to build your knowledge about an area. And you can go back and do it DIY sometimes as well once you have that experience. The other thing I love about the RV, and I learned this on our last trip, last summer, spent 6 weeks in New Mexico and Colorado, and it was amazing to have the RV because I could go to spots that allowed me to be on the river first thing in the morning, and I'm the last one to get off the river at night, and I walk straight to the RV and make dinner, and I'm ready to chill for the night. That was great. And no messing with boats. Of course, I was wade fishing a lot of that time, but one of them I wasn't. James Garrettson from About Trout picked us up at the Crusher Hole on the San Juan. We just stepped outside of the RV, put our waders on, jumped in his truck, and we were deployed onto the river within 10, 15 minutes. So, and then when we got back, we grabbed our rods, could fish some more right in front of our campsite there, and got up again and hit Crusher Hole area the next morning before we had to leave. All right there because we were 15 feet from the water. Same experience at the Conejos, even better experience at the Gunnison. We didn't realize it, but we stayed at our favorite spot, Pleasure Park. Just an amazing place. And there you can also rent a raft and head down the river, no problem. But we realized that our camp spot, we got woken up in the morning. One morning, we probably should have been up a little earlier, but the guide's doing roll-arounds right in front of our campsite. Realized that we were on a honey hole right there past the ramp, right at the top of the lower canyon area, and had the best day fishing right there in front of our campsite. Fished till lunch, made lunch. We went and did some exploring, then came back and fished the evening that same run, and literally just took the waders off and finished our dinner, or made dinner. So, just really cool experience, and the RV made that possible. So you get to be closer to the fish, you stay closer to the rivers and the lakes and the bodies of water that you're fishing, and I think that's a huge advantage as well. So gone on now for a little bit. That's really my main thoughts. If you haven't thought about it, consider an RV instead of maybe a boat. Those boat payments get expensive. RV payments aren't cheap either, but once it's paid for, you got a free place to stay wherever you go, and you can use those savings to get a guide who has the right boat for the right job and the knowledge. I think that's pretty much going to do it for this page of field notes. Oh my God. I don't know who that is. It just ran behind me, but I'm never doing one of these videos again at 6 o'clock in front of my house. Y'all have a good one. We'll see you next week. Bye.